The story of Dilmun begins in the warm glow of the Persian Gulf, where the sea meets endless deserts, and the sun rises over a land that would one day be celebrated as a paradise by the scribes of Sum. It was here, thousands of years ago, that a kingdom emerged, one of the first trading empires in the ancient world, yet almost entirely forgotten by time. Dilmun was not merely a place of commerce. It was a crossroads of cultures, a vital artery connecting the great civilizations of the ancient Near East, caravans laden with copper, ivory, and precious stones arrived from the distant mountains of Oman, while Mesopotamian merchants brought silver, lustrous textiles, and tales of mighty cities like Uruk and Ar. The people of Dilmun, skilled sailors and astute traders, navigated the delicate balances between these powerful neighbors. Through their diplomacy and maritime prowess, they earned their kingdom a reputation as a neutral, sacred, and prosperous land, a sanctuary in a world of constant conflict. In the Sumerian epics, Dilmun is described in almost mythical terms, a garden of the gods, a land of eternal purity where sickness and death held no sway. Here, the line between myth and reality blurred. Archaeologists today, digging beneath the sands of modern Bahrain, still uncover the remnants of this legendary kingdom, towering structures, vast ceremonial mounds, and intricate burial sites that whisper of a society deeply invested in both earthly trade and otherworldly spirituality. One of the most fascinating aspects of Dilmun was its ability to thrive for centuries despite the harsh climate and arid surroundings. Its people were brilliant engineers, creating sophisticated irrigation canals and deep wells that tapped into hidden freshwater springs. These life-giving waters allowed lush groves of palm trees to flourish against the backdrop of the desert, and they harvested dates, fish, and pearls to sustain both their own population and the countless traders who visited their shores. The Persian Gulf, once a simple coastline, became a lifeline, a shimmering highway guiding their wooden ships to distant lands. The influence of Dilmun resonated as far as Mesopotamia, where Sumerian clay tablets frequently mentioned the kingdom as a source of exotic goods and divine knowledge. Some texts even describe Dilmun as the place where the sun rises, a poetic metaphor for its position at the very edge of their known world. Over time, the kingdom became enshrined in legend, a golden land that existed both in the vivid imagination of ancient peoples and in the bustling reality of its ports and marketplaces. But Dilmun was not just a hub of trade. It was also a land of enigmatic rulers, whose names and faces remain shrouded in mystery. Archaeological digs have revealed grand tombs and monumental stone structures, hinting at a complex society with hierarchies, rituals, and beliefs that rivaled those of Mesopotamia. Who were these rulers? How did they govern? And how did they maintain such a flourishing civilization amidst the unforgiving deserts and seas? These questions remain tantalizingly unanswered, fueling the mystique of this forgotten kingdom. The decline of Dilmun is as mysterious as its rise. By around 600 BCE, after more than 2 millennia of prominence, it had faded from the historical record. New powers like Babylon and Persia rose to dominance, trade routes shifted, and the once vibrant ports of Dilmun fell silent. The reasons are not entirely clear, lost to the shifting sands of time. Yet its legacy endures in the lines of ancient cuneiform texts, in the silent mounds of its ruins, and in the imagination of those who study it today. The story of Dilmun is a powerful reminder that even the most forgotten civilizations have stories worth telling, stories that whisper across the millennia, inviting us to listen and to explore their long-lost secrets. It proves that history is not just a record of great empires and famous kings, but also a tapestry woven with the threads of forgotten peoples who once shaped the world. The sun had barely risen over the vast deserts surrounding Dilmun when the city came alive. In narrow, sandy streets, merchants prepared their stalls for the day, arranging copper tools, woven textiles, and beads of ivory that had traveled across continents. The air was filled with the salty scent of the sea and the faint aroma of dates drying in the sun. Life in Dilmun was a delicate balance between work and devotion. Families tended to their palm groves, irrigated by canals carefully carved into the desert floor. Fishermen set out in small wooden boats, their nets glinting as they caught fish that would be sold in bustling markets or used in ceremonial feasts. Children played along the shore, their laughter mingling with the gentle lapping of waves, while elders sat beneath the shade of date palms, recounting tales of gods and kings. Trade was the lifeblood of the kingdom. Wooden ships, intricately constructed to withstand long voyages, carried Dilmun's goods across the Persian Gulf to Mesopotamia. In return, silver, wool, and exotic spices arrived, exchanged in a ritual that was as much about diplomacy as commerce. Merchants were revered, for they were not only providers of wealth, but also conveyors of knowledge from distant lands. Yet, Dilmun was more than a trading hub. Temples and shrines dotted the city, adorned with carvings of gods and protective spirits. Ceremonies were held to honor Enki, the Sumerian god of water and wisdom, whom the people believed watched over their kingdom. Priests, clad in flowing robes, performed intricate rituals, pouring offerings into sacred wells and chanting hymns that echoed across the desert. Art and craftsmanship flourished in this ancient kingdom. Potters shaped clay into vessels of extraordinary beauty, while metalworkers hammered copper into tools and ornaments. Jewelry of gold and semi-precious stones adorned the elite, reflecting both status and devotion. The people of Dilmun were meticulous, and their dedication to both craft and ritual ensured that their civilization remained vibrant for centuries. Despite the harshness of the surrounding deserts, Dilmun thrived because of its people's ingenuity. Wells, canals, and reservoirs provided water not only for drinking but also for ceremonial purification, sustaining both the body and the spirit. Palm trees and other vegetation created pockets of life and shade, transforming the arid landscape into a mosaic of green and gold. Trade was not merely transactional, it was a conduit of culture. Scribes recorded transactions in cuneiform, maintaining meticulous accounts of goods, debts, and exchanges. These records, some of which survive to this day, reveal a kingdom deeply interconnected with the wider world. A place where ideas, customs, and innovations flowed freely along with silver and copper. Yet, amidst prosperity, the people of Dilmun never lost sight of the sacred. Festivals celebrated the cycles of the moon, the rising of the sun, and the bounty of the land. Music and dance, performed in temple courtyards, echoed across the city, blending the rhythms of the desert with the songs of distant lands. In every corner, there was a sense that life, trade, and devotion were intertwined, forming a society that was both practical and deeply spiritual. As night fell, lanterns illuminated the streets and marketplaces, casting long shadows across stone and sand. The sound of waves mingled with the murmur of the city, creating an ambience that was both lively and tranquil. Dilmun, though hidden from the eyes of many, was a jewel of the ancient world, a civilization that thrived on trade, faith, and the tireless efforts of its people. Long before Dilmun faded from memory, it was ruled by kings whose names are mostly lost to history. yet whose legacies remain etched in stone and earth. These rulers were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They were stewards of trade, culture, and spirituality. They built temples, oversaw irrigation projects, and maintained the delicate balance that allowed Dilmun to thrive amidst the unforgiving desert and the shimmering waters of the Gulf. Monuments and ceremonial mounds scattered across what is now Bahrain speak of a society with deep reverence for the divine. Some of these structures are simple platforms, perhaps once used for offerings or celestial observations. Others are elaborate tombs, their chambers carefully constructed to honor the dead, often filled with pottery, jewelry, and small idols. Archaeologists today can only speculate about the stories of the people buried within. But the care taken in their interment hints at a profound belief in the afterlife. One of the most enigmatic sites is the Barber Temple Complex, a collection of temples built over centuries, layered one atop the other. These temples, dedicated to gods of water and fertility, feature altars, wells, and carvings that speak of rituals long forgotten. Archaeologists have discovered large water basins, possibly used in sacred purification ceremonies, suggesting that water so scarce in the surrounding desert held both practical and immense spiritual significance. The kings of Dilmun were intimately tied to the prosperity of their land. They ensured safe passage for merchants, mediated disputes, and perhaps even oversaw the construction of canals that stretched across the region. Some ancient texts hint that the rulers were considered semi-divine, acting as intermediaries between humans and the gods. Yet, despite their power, Dilmun's rulers remain largely anonymous, their identities lost in the sands of time, leaving us only with silent monuments as testimony to their existence. Archaeological discoveries also hint at Dilmun's connections far beyond the Gulf. Seals, inscriptions, and artifacts show extensive trade links with Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, and even distant Oman. These objects are not merely goods, they are symbols of diplomacy, cultural exchange, and the wealth of knowledge that flowed through Dilmun. Each carved seal tells a story of contracts, of sacred oaths, and of a kingdom at the very heart of the ancient world's network of commerce. Yet Dilmun held mysteries that went beyond trade and politics. Sumerian texts describe it as the land of the living, a place untouched by disease and decay. Legends speak of lush gardens, sparkling rivers, and fruit that granted vitality to those who ate it. Modern archaeology has yet to confirm these myths, but the alignment of certain temple structures with celestial bodies suggests that the people of Dilmun were keen observers of the heavens, perhaps integrating astronomy with spirituality in ways we are only just beginning to understand. Even today, the ruins of Dilmun provoke a sense of awe. Massive stone blocks, worn by wind and water, hint at a civilization that valued permanence and legacy. Burials in elaborate mounds, temples with carved altars, and canals that survive as subtle impressions in the desert floor all point to a society both practical and deeply spiritual. To walk among these remnants is to step into a world where myth and reality intertwined, where kings ruled not only with power but with a vision of harmony between people, gods, and the land. As the sun sets over the Gulf, casting long shadows across the sand, one can imagine the kings of Dilmun gazing out over their city, proud of their accomplishments yet aware of the fragile beauty of their kingdom. The monuments they left behind whisper across millennia, a silent testament to the ingenuity, devotion, and enduring mystery of one of the ancient world's most remarkable civilizations. For centuries, Dilmun thrived, a jewel at the edge of the known world. Its markets bustled with commerce, its temples echoed with sacred chants, and its harbors brimmed with goods from distant lands. But like all great civilizations, Dilmun's story was not destined to last forever. The kingdom's decline was gradual, marked not by a single cataclysm, but by the slow erosion of its trade networks and the shifting tides of history. By the 6th century BCE, new powers began to dominate the Persian Gulf. Mesopotamian city-states faced their own challenges, while rising empires like Babylon and Assyria redirected trade routes, leaving Dilmun increasingly isolated. Caravans that once carried copper, ivory, and precious stones now bypassed the kingdom, favoring faster or safer paths. The harbors that had once welcomed ships from distant lands became quieter as the hum of commerce faded into the desert winds. The people of Dilmun adapted as best they could. They continued to cultivate date palms, fish from the Gulf, and honor their gods in the temples. But the economic decline brought subtle changes to their society. Monumental construction slowed to a halt, trade caravans became less frequent, and the once prosperous markets held fewer exotic goods. Scholars today speculate that environmental factors may also have played a role. Shifts in the Gulf's water levels, increasing desertification, or declining fertility in agricultural lands could have contributed to the gradual fading of this remarkable civilization. Despite its decline, the legends of Dilmun persisted. Sumerian texts continue to describe it as a land of the living, a sacred paradise untouched by disease and sorrow. Travelers and merchants spoke in hushed tones of its lush gardens, its crystal-clear waters, and palm groves that bore the sweetest dates. Even as the kingdom faded from political prominence, its reputation as a mystical land endured, inspiring myths and stories for generations to come. Archaeological evidence hints at the complexity of Dilmun's slow demise. Some temples were abandoned, their sacred wells left to run dry, ceremonial mounds fell into disuse, and the once vibrant seals and inscriptions became rarer. Yet, the physical remnants of the kingdom, the stone structures, the burial mounds, and the ancient canals endured, whispering secrets of a civilization that had mastered both trade and devotion. What made Dilmun so captivating to both its contemporaries and later generations was not merely its wealth, but its aura of sacredness. To the Sumerians, it was a bridge between the mundane and the divine. To the people of Dilmun, it was a home of prosperity and piety, where kings, merchants, and priests coexisted in a delicate harmony. The fading of Dilmun reminds us that even the most celebrated civilizations are subject to the impermanence of time, yet their stories etched in text, stone, and memory can endure far longer than their political power. By the time Dilmun disappeared from the historical record, the kingdom had left a legacy that transcended its borders. Its influence can be traced in the trade patterns of Mesopotamia, the myths of Sumerian scribes, and the very fabric of ancient Gulf culture. The land itself, now modern Bahrain, continues to reveal glimpses of this lost paradise through archaeological discoveries, allowing us to piece together the narrative of a civilization that once stood at the crossroads of the ancient world. As twilight descends over the desert and the gentle lapping of the Persian Gulf soothes the coastline, one can almost imagine the people of Dilmun, traders, priests, and kings alike walking through their city, performing daily rituals, or watching the sunset over a kingdom that was once alive with life, trade, and faith. Though the kingdom has vanished, its memory endures, whispering to us across millennia, inviting modern explorers to uncover the mysteries of a land that time itself could not entirely erase. Long after the markets of Dilmun had quieted and its kings had passed into memory, the kingdom endured. It lived on in stories and myths, whispered along the coasts of Mesopotamia and preserved in the clay tablets of Sumerian scribes. To these ancient storytellers, Dilmun was far more than a simple trading hub. It was a sacred land, a paradise untouched by illness, decay, or sorrow. One of the most intriguing legends describes Dilmun as the home of Enki's sacred waters, the life-giving springs of the god of wisdom and water. According to the Sumerians, Enki chose this land to dwell, and in doing so, it became a place where human suffering could be eased. Scholars speculate that this association may have been inspired by the kingdom's ingenious irrigation systems and fertile date groves, which transformed a harsh desert into a haven of abundance. The myths speak of lush gardens where exotic fruits grew in abundance and crystal-clear rivers flowed endlessly. Travelers who returned from Dilmun, whether real or imagined, told tales of a golden land where time seemed slower, where the sun always shone, and where people lived in harmony with the divine. These descriptions blurred the line between reality and imagination, turning Dilmun into a symbol of a perfect, unattainable paradise. Dilmun was also central to Sumerian cosmology. It is mentioned in the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the earliest known stories of humanity, as a land at the edge of the world. A place where the gods' influence could still be felt directly. Here, mortals could touch divinity through rituals, offerings, and devotion, creating a bond between the earthly and the celestial. For the people of Dilmun, this spiritual connection was woven into daily life. From harvesting dates to building temples, each action carried a sense of sacred purpose. Priests in Dilmun performed ceremonies not just for the gods, but for the harmony of the land itself. Offerings of water, grain, and precious stones were poured into sacred wells, believed to ensure fertility, protection, and prosperity. Music and chanting, echoing through temple courtyards, were thought to align human intention with the cosmic order. The rituals were meticulous, reflecting a society that valued both practicality and spiritual insight. Understanding that prosperity and divine favor were intimately connected. Even after Dilmun's decline, these myths traveled far beyond its shores. Sumerian scribes, Mesopotamian merchants, and later chroniclers recounted stories of the kingdom, embedding its image in the cultural memory of the ancient world. Dilmun became a symbol of perfection, a reference point for later civilizations that sought to understand the ideal relationship between humanity, nature, and the divine. Modern archaeologists continue to uncover evidence that bridges the gap between legend and reality. Sacred wells, ceremonial mounds, and temple foundations align with the descriptions found in Sumerian texts. The myths, it seems, were grounded in the lived reality of Dilmun, a civilization that was both materially prosperous and spiritually attuned. The kingdom's enduring legacy lies in this duality, a place of commerce and devotion, of ordinary life and extraordinary myth. As night falls over the remnants of the kingdom, one can almost hear the echoes of Sumerian chants, the flow of sacred waters, and the rustle of date palms in the desert breeze. Dilmun, though long gone, remains alive in stories, myths, and archaeological whispers. It's a testament to a civilization that achieved harmony between people, trade, and the divine, and which continues to captivate the imagination of those who seek the lost wonders of the ancient world. Though Dilmun gradually faded from prominence, its influence rippled across the ancient world. This small kingdom, perched on the edge of the Persian Gulf, was more than just a waypoint for traders. It was a bridge connecting cultures, ideas, and technologies between Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, and the Arabian Peninsula. The trade routes that passed through Dilmun carried not only goods, but also knowledge. Merchants transported silver, copper, ivory, precious stones, and spices, But alongside these commodities traveled artistic techniques, religious practices, and administrative systems. Clay seals from Dilmun, intricately carved, have been found in distant lands, a quiet testament to the far-reaching presence of this seemingly modest kingdom. Mesopotamian cities depended on Dilmun for certain imports, like copper and pearls, which were essential for both everyday life and sacred rituals. In return, Dilmun absorbed Mesopotamian influences from writing systems to religious symbols, adapting them into its own unique culture. This exchange created a hybrid identity, one that reflected both the kingdom's independence and its deep connection to the wider ancient world. The Indus Valley, too, felt the reach of Dilmun. Archaeologists have found Indus-style seals in Dilmun's ruins, suggesting that trade was not merely transactional, but also deeply personal, involving long-standing relationships between merchants and families across regions. These connections facilitated a profound cultural exchange, spreading technological innovations, artistic styles, and even culinary practices across the Gulf and beyond. Dilmun's spiritual influence was subtle, but enduring. The Sumerian myths that praised Dilmun as a sacred land were not just stories. They shaped perceptions of paradise and divine order in neighboring cultures. The kingdom's temples, its sacred wells, and its ceremonial mounds inspired architectural and ritual practices in surrounding regions. They left a lasting mark on how subsequent civilizations conceived of sacred spaces and the interaction between the mortal and the divine. Perhaps most remarkable was Dilmun's role as a stabilizing presence in a volatile region. Its rulers maintained a careful neutrality, allowing the kingdom to serve as a trusted hub for both trade and diplomacy. This reputation attracted merchants, scribes, and travelers who relied on Dilmun's fair governance and protected harbors, making it an essential link in the great chain of ancient commerce. Even as great empires rose and fell around it, Dilmun's legacy persisted in quiet, subtle ways. Its well-established trade networks informed the economic strategies of later Gulf civilizations, while its myths and rituals continued to influence religious thought in Mesopotamia and beyond. Today, the remnants of canals, the intricate seals, and the foundations of temples whisper of a civilization that, though vanished, continues to shape the stories, the commerce, and the imagination of the world. In contemplating Dilmun, we are reminded that the significance of a civilization is not solely measured by its longevity or its conquests. Sometimes, its true importance lies in the connections it fosters, the stories it inspires, and the innovations it seeds, an enduring testament to human ingenuity and vision. Though the sands of time may have buried much of Dilmun, its echoes remain, inviting us to explore, to wonder, and to imagine the lives of those who once walked its streets, traded its goods, and honored its gods. No kingdom lasts forever. Even the radiant shores of Dilmun were not immune to the slow, creeping erosion of time. The end of this ancient civilization was not a sudden, violent cataclysm. It was a subtle confluence of forces, a quiet fading, like the last embers of a great fire. Scholars now believe that the very waters which gave Dilmun life also played a part in its undoing. The coastline of the Persian Gulf is not static over centuries. Shifting tides and rising seas may have reshaped the land, altering the natural harbors that were the gateways for trade, the once dependable irrigation canals, arteries of life that fed the palm groves and fields, grew harder to maintain as the desert began to reclaim its territory. Small, almost imperceptible changes in rainfall, accumulating over decades, would have strained agriculture, slowly destabilizing the communities that relied upon the land's bounty. The trade routes which had served as Dilmun's very lifeblood for centuries, began to change their course. New powers were rising in Mesopotamia and along the Arabian Peninsula, drawing caravans and ships toward different ports. The exotic goods that had once flowed so freely through Dilmun's markets, gleaming copper, precious ivory, lustrous pearls, and fragrant spices, became rarer. Merchants, faced with shifting political alliances and longer, more perilous journeys, began to seek out safer and more profitable routes. For a kingdom whose entire identity was built on being a central hub, this slow diversion of trade was a quiet but relentless flow. Political winds were also shifting. Dilmun had long thrived as a neutral and stable sanctuary, a peaceful intermediary between giants, but the rise of powerful, expansionist empires like Assyria, Babylon, and later Persia fundamentally altered the regional balance of power. Dilmun's influence began to wane as these larger states absorbed its trading partners, imposing new rules and redirecting commerce to serve their own imperial ambitions. The island kingdom found itself increasingly isolated, a small fish in a sea now dominated by sharks. Yet, life in Dilmun did not simply stop. People continued to farm the land, fish the Gulf, and offer prayers to their gods. Festivals were still celebrated in the shade of the date palms, and artisans continued to shape clay and carve stone. But the vibrant pulse of the kingdom had slowed. The grand temples were maintained with less care, the vital canals required repairs more often, and the once bustling markets grew quieter with each passing year. The archaeological record whispers this story of a gradual fading. We find ceremonial burial mounds that were started but never finished. The intricate pottery styles of Dilmun's golden age give way to simpler, more functional designs. The seals and inscriptions, once ubiquitous symbols of a literate and organized society, become fewer and less elaborate, even as the kingdom receded from historical prominence. Its people adapted. They survived the changing times with a quiet resilience, their lives continuing at a slower, more deliberate pace. By the 6th century BC, Dilmun had all but vanished from the political records of the ancient world. The great ships no longer docked in its harbors, and foreign merchants had turned their gaze elsewhere. But the memory of the kingdom lingered. The stories of a mythical paradise at the edge of the world, first written down in Sumerian texts, kept Dilmun alive in the collective imagination of distant civilizations, transforming it from a place of history into a land of legend. The decline of Dilmun is a powerful reminder that even the most prosperous civilizations are intimately tied to the delicate balance of nature, commerce, and power. Its fading was not a dramatic spectacle, but a gradual, almost imperceptible dimming of a once brilliant light. And yet, even in its twilight, Dilmun left behind a profound legacy, a testament to human ingenuity, the power of cultural exchange, and the timeless dance between society and the environment. Today, as the desert winds whisper across the silent ruins and the ancient burial mounds, you can almost hear the echoes of that long-lost world, the calls of merchants haggling in the market, the laughter of children playing by the shore, the rhythmic chants of priests in the temples. They are faint reminders of a kingdom that flourished, adapted, and ultimately faded into the sands of time, leaving behind stories, artifacts, and myths that continue to endure. By day, Dilmun was a kingdom of trade, ritual, and diplomacy. Its wealth was measured in copper ingots and pearls, its power etched into treaties with Mesopotamia. But behind the bustling marketplaces and sacred temples lived a quieter, softer world, the world of ordinary people whose lives stitched together the very fabric of this ancient civilization. Their stories, though rarely carved into stone or recorded on clay tablets, live on. They echo through the artifacts they left behind, the bones of their homes, and the traditions preserved for millennia in the desert sands. This is the story of the true heart of Dilmun. As dawn broke, a soft golden light washed over the mud brick neighborhoods. Before the sun's heat became a burden, the day began. The gentle tapping of children's footsteps echoed in stone courtyards as they fetched water from community wells. In the kitchens, women prepared the morning meal. The smell of fresh bread baking in clay ovens mingled with the sweetness of dates being crushed into a paste. Milk warmed over glowing coal embers offered simple comfort. Simultaneously, the men began their daily labors. Some walked to the lush date groves, their silhouettes framed against the rising sun, ready to tend to the source of Dilmun's sweetest treasure. Others headed to the coast, their fishing boats waiting to be guided into the turquoise waters of the Gulf. And in the bustling trade districts, merchants and laborers loaded goods onto caravans bound for the great cities of Mesopotamia, their movements a practiced dance of commerce. The core of Dilmun life was its simplicity, but it was a simplicity enriched by a constant, gentle rhythm, the hum of trade, the presence of foreign travelers, and the quiet confidence of a culture at peace with itself. In the shaded workshops, the kingdom's artistic soul came alive. Craftspeople, with hands weathered by their trade, shaped clay into pottery with distinctive, polished red slips. They took soft stone, a material abundant in the region, and carved it into intricate vessels, their patterns telling stories of waves, dunes, and divine symbols. Weavers sat at their looms, their fingers moving with practiced speed, creating textiles using techniques learned from lands far across the sea. Trade had taught them patience. The unforgiving desert had taught them resilience. Every pot, every carving, every cloth was a testament to this unique blend of worldly knowledge and local spirit. When the sun reached its peak, casting harsh shadows and driving life indoors, a different rhythm took over. Families gathered in the cool refuge of their central courtyards, shaded from the intense heat. Here, children played with small, handmade toys, miniature animals, and tiny carts carved from wood or molded from clay. These simple creations reflected both a child's boundless imagination and the realities of their world, a world of caravans and livestock. In these quiet afternoon hours, elders became the keepers of memory. They recited stories passed down through countless generations, their voices low and steady. They spoke of gods who controlled the life-giving rains, and of ancestors who sailed the seas and brought prosperity to their island home. Though they were not kings, the people of Dilmun lived with a quiet dignity. Their homes, constructed from sun-dried mud brick, were designed for the climate. Most were built around a central courtyard, an open-air heart of the home. This space was for cooking, for storytelling, and for resting in the cool evening air. The clever design allowed breezes to flow through the living spaces, offering a natural and welcome relief from the afternoon heat. These were not just houses, they were sanctuaries. Status in Dilmun was often tied to the lifeblood of the kingdom, trade. A successful merchant might inhabit a larger home, perhaps with grand carved stone pillars or luxurious pottery imported from the Indus Valley. A fisherman's home, built near the coast, would be simpler, its walls decorated with fishing nets, colorful shells, and the tools of his trade. Artisans often lived clustered near their workshops, the rhythmic tapping of chisels and hammers providing a constant soundtrack to their neighborhood. But despite these differences in wealth and profession, the communities were incredibly close-knit. The survival of all depended on the cooperation of each. Festivals and religious rituals were powerful equalizers, moments when the entire community came together. In these times of celebration, everyone, from the wealthiest merchant to the humblest farmer, stood as one before the gods. Dilmun's festivals were vibrant, joyous expressions of spirituality, blending the grand traditions of Mesopotamia with distinctly local customs. During the harvest festivals, celebrating the bounty of the date palms, families would adorn themselves with jewelry made of polished shells and gleaming copper. As dusk fell, children carried small, flickering lanterns through the streets, their soft light a symbol of protection, prosperity, and the enduring flame of community life. Music filled the air. The steady, hypnotic beat of frame drums laid a foundation for the distant, delicate ringing of small bronze bells. The haunting, melodic notes of reed flutes drifted from temple courtyards. Their priestesses in flowing white garments would dance before the altars, their movements both a prayer and a celebration. They made offerings of fresh dates, fragrant flowers, and precious oils to honor the gods and ensure their continued favor. In the evening, the marketplaces transformed. The day's commerce gave way to a lively social gathering. Merchants, their work done, would share incredible stories of distant lands and perilous journeys. Travelers, passing through this vital crossroads, exchanged news from across the known world. Under the soft, warm glow of oil lamps, elders would recite the great myths of creation and the heroic legends of their ancestors. For the people of Dilmun, these festivals were not just entertainment. They were moments to reaffirm their shared identity, to honor their community bonds, and to remind themselves of the deep, sacred connection they had with their island home. Meals were almost always communal events, reinforcing the importance of family and kinship. Families would gather to share simple, wholesome food, warm flatbreads, fish seasoned with dessert herbs, dates sweetened with honey, and, on special occasions and feast days, roasted goat meat. From a young age, children learned the skills they would need to contribute. They learned how to fish, how to weave, how to make a fair trade, and how to help in the date groves. More importantly, parents taught them the core values of their society: honesty in business, hospitality to strangers, and a deep respect for the natural world that sustained them. Dilmun's prosperity was built as much on cooperation as it was on commerce. As night fell, a cool wind would sweep in from the Gulf, washing over the city and bringing relief from the day's heat. Families would often gather on the flat rooftops of their homes, a final moment of togetherness before sleep. They would watch the stars, brilliant and countless in the vast, unpolluted desert sky. That sky became a canvas for their stories, with constellations tied to their gods, to the great empires they traded with, and to the timeless legends of their people. It's in these quiet, ordinary moments that we glimpse the true soul of Dilmun. Not in its grand temples or its bustling trade routes, but in its people living, loving, celebrating, and enduring their lives, a testament to a civilization that found strength in simplicity and grace in the rhythms of the earth. For centuries, the story of Dilmun was nothing more than a whisper, a myth of a lost paradise buried somewhere beneath the desert sands. Legends spoke of a golden land, a sacred place at the edge of the world. But as the 20th century dawned, the line between myth and history began to dissolve. Thanks to the tireless work of modern archaeologists, they came to the shores of the Persian Gulf, to Bahrain, drawn by these ancient tales at sites like Barber, Sar, and the magnificent Qalat al-Bahrain. Their shovels and brushes began to uncover something extraordinary. They weren't just digging up sand, they were unearthing a civilization, ancient mounds, sacred temples, and sprawling burial grounds emerged from their slumber, revealing a sophisticated society that had thrived thousands of years ago. Every artifact they found was a piece of a grand puzzle: a small clay seal, a heavy copper ingot, a simple pottery shard. Each one held a secret. These weren't just objects. They were keys that unlocked the story of a kingdom that once connected entire continents through trade, faith, and culture. The myths were finally taking tangible shape. The Barber Temple complex, in particular, was a revelation. As archaeologists dug deeper, they uncovered layer upon layer of construction, a clear sign of centuries of continuous worship. They found sacred wells, stone altars, and intricate carvings that painted a vivid picture of the spiritual life in Dilmun. The ancient Sumerian texts, which had long hinted at Dilmun's sacred status, were being proven right. This was not just a marketplace, it was a holy land, simultaneously. The vast fields of burial mounds began to share their own secrets inside these earthen tombs. Archaeologists found carefully interred bodies often laid to rest with their personal belongings. Exquisite jewelry, tools, and symbolic artifacts accompanied them into the afterlife. These discoveries offered a deeply personal glimpse into their society, showing a people who honored their dead with meticulous rituals while celebrating a vibrant daily life. It was a culture that valued both the journey here on Earth and the one that came after. The most compelling evidence, however, came from the smallest of artifacts, the iconic Dilmun seals. These tiny, intricately carved stamps, no bigger than a thumb, were the kingdom's official signature. When archaeologists found seals identical to those discovered in far-off Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley, it was a breakthrough. Here was the undeniable proof of Dilmun's vast trade network, the tangible link that confirmed the stories written in ancient cuneiform. The gap between legend and reality was closing. They found physical evidence of this trade everywhere. Copper, traced back to the mountains of Oman, lay alongside beautiful carnelian beads from the Indus Valley. Pottery fragments showed artistic styles and techniques borrowed from distant cultures. Dilmun was a true crossroads of the ancient world, a bustling hub where goods, ideas, and people from across continents converged. Yet, for all that has been discovered, Dilmun still holds its mysteries close. Who were the kings that ruled this powerful kingdom? We have names, but the full picture of their dynasty and governance remains elusive. How exactly was their society organized, from the priests in the temples to the merchants in the harbors? And why did certain trade goods suddenly appear or vanish from the archaeological record? These questions hang in the air, tantalizingly open, leaving room for us to wonder and imagine. Recent studies have also revealed another layer of Dilmun's genius: their mastery over the environment. In a harsh desert climate where water is life, the people of Dilmun proved to be brilliant engineers. Archaeologists have uncovered ancient canals, vast reservoirs, and sophisticated water management systems. This ingenuity allowed them to cultivate lush gardens and sustain a large population, creating an oasis of life where others might have failed. They wove a delicate balance between nature, commerce, and spirituality, turning the desert into a paradise. To walk through these archaeological sites today is to feel the echoes of the past, standing among the ruins of the Barber Temple at dawn. You can almost hear the faint chant of priests greeting the sun. In the shadow of Kalat al-Bahrain, you can imagine the bustling harbor filled with the calls of merchants haggling over copper and pearls. The ruins are not silent. They speak to those who listen. Archaeology, combined with the study of ancient myths, allows us to piece together the rhythm of life in Dilmun. It reminds us that even civilizations long forgotten leave behind an indelible mark, a story written in stone and sand that can speak to us across millennia. The rediscovery of Dilmun is so much more than an academic pursuit. It is a profound journey into the heart of our shared human history. It reveals a civilization that mastered the arts of trade, devotion, and community, building a legacy that defied the sands of time. Dilmun teaches us that legends, no matter how fantastical, are often rooted in a deeper truth, and that every ruin, every artifact, and every inscription carries a story. The story of Dilmun is a journey across time, stretching from the hushed whispers of ancient Sumerian myths all the way to the solid, tangible stones unearthed by modern archaeologists. It's a tale of incredible prosperity, of human ingenuity, of deep devotion, and ultimately, of the relentless, inexorable passage of time. Though Dilmun's bustling markets eventually fell silent, its sacred temples crumbled, and its powerful kings vanished into the mists of memory, this kingdom left behind so much more than just ruins. It left lessons for us, lessons etched into stone, water, and soil. It tells the story of a civilization that masterfully harmonized the worlds of trade, spirituality, and community, creating a society that was both prosperous and profound. The ancient myths that describe Dilmun as a land of the living, a paradise on earth, might have been poetic exaggerations, but like all great legends, they contain kernels of truth. They speak to a fundamental human aspiration for a better world. The people of Dilmun didn't just cultivate crops and commerce. They cultivated culture, devotion, and a strong sense of social cohesion. They managed to thrive in a challenging desert environment where others might have struggled, proving that ingenuity, collaboration, and a deep reverence for nature are timeless keys to survival and prosperity. These weren't just abstract ideas. They were the very foundation of their success. Modern archaeology has completely shattered the old idea that Dilmun was an isolated kingdom. In reality, it was a vibrant hub, and its influence radiated across vast distances, reaching Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, and the Arabian Peninsula. The thousands of distinctive clay seals, the intricate inscriptions, and the beautiful artifacts discovered across this wide region all testified to a kingdom that was deeply connected, remarkably adaptive, and incredibly resilient. Through these discoveries, we can see that even civilizations that fade from the main stage of history leave an enduring and powerful imprint on the world, shaping cultures and trade routes long after their names are forgotten. The story of Dilmun also serves as a poignant reminder of the fragile, delicate balance between human ambition and the constraints of our environment. Its decline wasn't a sudden, cataclysmic event. It was subtle, gradual, and influenced by a complex web of factors, including shifting trade routes and changing climates. This slow fade is a testament to a sobering reality. Even the most sophisticated and successful societies are vulnerable to the powerful forces of nature and the shifting sands of geopolitics. No civilization, no matter how great, is immune to change, yet, in its very fading, Dilmun achieved a different kind of immortality. It became eternal, preserved not in stone and mortar, but in stories, myths, and the collective imagination of countless generations. Writers, historians, and archaeologists have become the modern keepers of its flame, diligently translating its silent ruins into profound lessons about culture, commerce, and spirituality. Its true legacy, then, lies not only in what it built, but in what it continues to inspire: a sense of curiosity, a spirit of exploration, and a deep reverence for the past. It challenges us to listen to the echoes of history. Standing amidst the ruins of Dilmun today, as the sun casts long shadows over the ancient stones, you can almost hear the echoes of life. If you close your eyes and listen, You might just catch the distant clatter of the markets, the rhythmic tap-tap-tapping of artisans at their work, the joyful laughter of children playing in the alleyways, and the solemn, melodic chants of priests greeting the dawn. The desert wind, a constant companion in this landscape, seems to carry these whispers through time, mingling history with imagination and hard fact with enchanting legend. Dilmun endures as a powerful symbol. It's a symbol of human ingenuity, of our ability to create order and beauty out of chaos. It's a symbol of the fascinating blend of myth and reality, showing how our stories and our histories are deeply intertwined. And perhaps most importantly, it's a symbol of the timeless human desire to create, to trade, to worship, and to leave something lasting behind. Its story is an open invitation for us to look beyond the ephemeral, to seek deeper meaning in the fragments of the past, and to truly appreciate the civilizations that, though long gone, continue to shape the world we inhabit today. In remembering Dilmun, we remember that history is not just a grand narrative of rulers, battles, and empires. It's about people. It's about the ordinary and the extraordinary individuals who lived, who dreamed, and who shaped their world with their hands and their hearts. And in their stories, in the tales of their triumphs and their struggles, we find both inspiration for our own lives and a sense of humility. They remind us that our own civilizations, our own achievements, are but chapters in the long, still unfolding story of humanity. And our part in that story is still being written. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into the past as fascinating as I did, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more explorations into the forgotten corners of history.